Okay, hello everybody. Great afternoon. I'm Claus Noppeney. I'm from Switzerland, representing Bern University of Applied Sciences. And the Scent Culture Institute we founded last year to promote our work in education and research and industry cooperations. And we welcome to our session on professionalizing artistic perfumery. With me here on the panel is Saskia Wilson-Brown from Los Angeles. Perhaps you say a few words about you.
Okay. Is everybody hearing us okay?
Because it sounds very noisy here in the front.
Yeah? Okay. Does everybody understand English? Okay. Too bad. My name is Saskia Wilson-Brown. I live in Los Angeles, and I founded the Institute for Art and Olfaction and the Art and Olfaction Awards about 3 years ago.
Perhaps I start with a couple of words about the background of this session today and how this came about and basically the making of story of it. Last summer, I had the chance to come to Los Angeles and I gave a talk at Saskia's Institute in Los Angeles. And during the talk and the following days, we got together for coffee and we thought what to do. And I first heard about the Art and Olfaction Awards. The Institute in Los Angeles had just completed and awarded for the first time. And being a social scientist, I thought that's an interesting development, even in the context of field configuring events, for example, that there's something going on that is manifest by the launch of this award that goes beyond the mere trade of an industry. And so I thought it would be interesting to get into a cooperation where we as researchers from Switzerland closely follow the process of the award for its second round and look at, for example, analyze the participants, analyze their motivations, and think about where this might be taken to at a later level. For our session here today, we have actually two major parts. Some of you might be here to hear about the finalists that will be disclosed at the end of our session. Saskia has this list. I even haven't seen them, but so there might be some tension in the room related to this. And secondly, I would like, in the beginning of our session here, in the first part, I would like to contextualize the Art and Olfaction Award in a broader framework, the framework we call here today Professionalizing Artistic Perfumery. Okay. And so Claus Noppeney, I introduced myself, my name. We are in Bern, and how I got into this field is actually through research, and through research on scent making, practices in perfume making. So we closely followed in this case here, Christophe Laudamiel, 5 or 6 years ago, in a first research project funded by the Swiss National Science Foundation. And this, how do I, okay. This, in the following years, then, we broadened our research perspective, and you see here on the, you see here a list of themes and topics we got into over the last 3 or 4 years. So starting from our focus on organizing processes related to scent processes, scent making, scent development, so questions such as how do perfumers work? How do perfumers work with designers? How do they work with the materials? How do they work with the ingredients? How do they communicate with evaluators? So these were questions we dealt with under the first topic. We then looked and got into looking and diagnosing and analyzing artistic perfumery at a broader level, asking, what are drivers in the field? What's happening in the field? How can we interpret or make sense of certain developments? I will come to that later in a minute. And then a third theme relates to smell, the sense of smell at the workplace. I'm a professor at a business school, and some of my students work in regular jobs, somewhere as administrators, middle managers, regular jobs. And so I sent them back to their workplaces, asked them to write smell diaries, and doing this, we identified a couple of issues and themes, recurring themes and questions that actually influence the way how corporations and organizations work these days. Thirdly, a fourth theme then is actually following from this, is that we discovered that people at the workplace today even pursue something we would call olfactory strategies. So for example, they use scents for distinct purposes when getting into certain meetings, when having a certain presentation. They have certain preferences for scent related to their work requirements, to their daily jobs. And I think from a management point of view and an organization study point of view or a business school, these are of course very valuable and very interesting insights. And finally, in particular, after I met with Ashraf Osman, who is here in the first row. We also then got further into the field and trying to research what's going on there at the intersection of art, fine arts, and the sense of smell. All this then led to the foundation of the Scent Culture Institute. You might consult the website, scentculture.institute. We launched that in the context of a cultural event we organized last year. At a cultural event we organized last year at Bern in the context of the Biennale Bern. Basically, we explored the old UNESCO heritage city of Bern with a nose, and together with a perfumer who is also here at Esxence in Milano these days, Andreas Wilhelm, an independent perfumer from Switzerland, we organized scent walks as a cultural activity, and that basically gave rise to the foundation of the Scent Culture Institute as a platform for research, education, and projects, industry and business projects. In terms of teaching, what we do in Bern, just one idea here, a few visuals. So we also took students on these scent walks, but I also teach scent culture at the business school in St. Gallen, which is probably one of the top 5 or top 3 schools in Europe. We have a first course there right now on scent culture and organizations. And more we also get into closer collaboration with business and industry. So here, for example, a talk at the World Perfumery Congress last year in Deauville. But we also try to get into work on innovating services through scent and the sense of smell, or given the background of the students, we send out back to their work, we get into odor management projects, evaluating these kinds of activities. Or right now, I supervise a master's student working on product design in the context of glues. Glues, an interesting material, because on the one hand, there are people addicted to the smell of glues, and on the other hand, it's harmful from a health point of view. Okay. So that was a brief overview of what we've been doing over the last 5 or 6 years in Bern. Right now, looking from the distant and from a kind of helicopter perspective on the field of artistic perfumery or niche perfumery or signature scents, there are a couple of interesting developments that become apparent and that emerge over the last 3 or 4 years. So probably the most visible and the most interesting step is the acquisition of Frédéric Malle and a couple of other traditionally niche labels by Estée Lauder. And I collaged here Frédéric Malle with a slogan that is attributed to Estée Lauder. I never dreamed about success, I worked for it. And in a way, I thought about collaging the two faces, Estée Lauder and Frédéric Malle. And but I then thought, well, it's interesting who is going to win from this bringing together these two different cultures and two different fields. A second development, which is worth noting, is the increased presence of niche in duty-free, for example. here we have a couple of pictures from Abu Dhabi, where a luxuriously designed store, 2,700 square foot large, displays a range of fragrances from around the world, some of them exclusively for the middle age. And this in a retail context that is traditionally not a niche context, but a very commercial and just a general retail context. Or coming then closer to the issue of rankings or awards, of course it's apparent that this vivid blog scene comes up with numerous lists of best-ofs. So, and some of these are devoted to niche exclusively, but what is even more interesting is the list Luca Turin came up with last year, a list which is a general list of his favorites and his best of, but niche is prominently present on this list. So I compiled this list of bullet points here to, perfect, thank you. I compiled this list of bullet points here to just to shed light on a couple of these developments. So niche brands take up increasingly more shelf space at upmarket department stores. Harrods is an example, but also stores in Paris or in New York. New generation of trendy perfume and cosmetic stores promote niche. So for example, in Zurich, we have a new store, a real competitor for the old established Oswald at Paradeplatz. Who's familiar with Zurich knows that there are two sides across the river. So there is a newer part and the older part. And recently there's a new store in the old part of the town. And this new generation of trendy perfume and cosmetic stores exclusively devoted to niche, of course, also promotes the sector. Then there is a growing perception, even by average consumers, that of the mimicry which is going on in the conventional field. And furthermore, an abundance of the variations of the product developments in the field. This tremendous number of product launches each year, above 1,000, of course, blurs the customer's perception and clarity of what niche is, what a specific brand or specific scent is really about. And finally, of course, institutions such as the Osmothek and the blogosphere and other formats also led to a substantial education of the consumers. So people getting on these blogs, reading them, perhaps not regularly, but just occasionally, or having friends, of course, get an idea that there's more in the world than just the brands they know. And these knowledgeable consumers, of course, become skeptical of what is offered to them in the regular market. Okay. This perhaps, that's an overview about a couple of developments I think are worth noting here. Now let's look at niche perfumes in a more focused way. What you see here, you're not expected to read it. What you see here is a review of two perfumes on Car Fleur Blanc by Silver Fox from 2014. It's a review on Perfume Général and Pierre Guillaume's Profane Lily Draw. And what I think is interesting here is that the blogs really treat perfumes as cultural products. They treat them as something meaningful, something to explore, and something worth analyzing. It's not just a commodity, it's not just a product to consume, it's not a consumer good. No, it's a cultural artifact that is worth looking at, worth analyzing, worth reading, worth getting other people into exchange with. That's the reason why these extensive reviews, of course, relate these products to other cultural domains, in this case here to paintings from European history, starting with Fra Angelico here in Italy, but also then other more contemporary 1960s pieces. And positioning and relating perfumes to this network of cultural references turns what used to be a commodity into a cultural product. And then, finally, there are other people discussing that and commenting on it. And all this, in a way, demonstrates to me, from an analytical point of view, that niche perfumery can be considered as part of creative industries, of culture industries, of the culture domain, more than just a consumer company. So we don't talk here, we are not part of the world of the Procter & Gamble's or the Unilevers of this world. We are part of a culturally transformed economy, the creative economy here. And scents are culture products. And that takes us to the issue of awards. As you know, cultural power and collective fascination with the Oscars, you see a picture here from the Academy Awards in Los Angeles, depends on the fact that they are not only money. That's another fact, that cultural products is not, it's not a commodity, it's not about money, it's a culture product, it's about cultural capital, social capital, sense making, meaning making, all this related to the product. It cannot be reduced to a mere cash function or sales. And this is also true for the awards. The awards here, even in the case of the Academy Awards in Los Angeles, in the film sector, in the film industry, these awards are not about money making. Some of the awards can be measured in terms of that there is an effect on the ticket sales at the booth, but at the end of the day, there's very little agreement in research here on what is the economic function of an award in the cultural industry. But there is no doubt that cultural awards are part of a comprehensive world, and that these cultural awards in artistic markets serve a number of functions. So what I'm reporting here is basically just social science literature and social science research on awards in other sectors, and I think this research can easily be transferred to the case here of the Art and Olfaction Awards. So cultural awards transfer symbolic capital in a prestige economy, for example. There are reputation effects related to an award. Awards are related to cultural branding. It's an form of incentive for culture producers to work, something they strive for, something they dream of, something their ambition is directed towards. There's a capacity that's not to neglect related to awards. There's a capacity associated with awards that the awards can predict or determine an eventual canon of esteemed work. So if we think about perfumes as cultural products, of course there is the issue of canon and canon building, and who is part of that canon, and who is canonized and who is excluded out of that canon. And awards are, from this perspective, very instrumental and pivotal even. There is a value within a system of culture status hierarchies. There is also, that's not to forget about as well, an award is always an opportunity for sponsorship. And if you look at the website of the IAO in Los Angeles and the awards, you see how this institution has already related and built up sponsorship with various institutions across the globe. And if we think about sponsorship in cultural context, we needn't think about monetary or financial sponsorship. We can also think about philanthropic or ideological or idealistic forms of sponsorship. And then there's the role of social capital, and that's something we might later get into during the discussion, that that awards build up social capital, and that they are part of a system of exchanges. So there is a certain reciprocity involving judges. The judges of this year might be submissions of next year, or last year's winners might be this year's judges that these are phenomena we can observe in other industries. And actually this year with the award, we had a situation where one of the submittants had to withdraw from the jury because he was then finally one of the finalists. So there is this, an award is always part of a system of exchanges. Here we might get into we might discuss that further later on. Okay. Now, in the field of perfumery, there are already awards, and some of you, and most of you probably are familiar with this. The most prominent awards are the Pfeiffer Awards that have been institutionalized since 1973. They are awarded at an international or global level by the International Fragrance Foundation and also at national levels. There are Pfeiffer Awards in Germany. They have a slightly different name, Duftstars. There are Pfeiffer Awards in UK, in France, and in many other countries. And if you look at the Pfeiffer Awards, there are some categories out of 20 that relate to our field here in Milano. So for example, last year there was a Best New Female Fragrance in Limited Distribution awarded to Tom Ford's Plum Japonais. There was another Best New Male Fragrance in Limited Distribution awarded to a scent by Bottega Veneta. There was a Best New Independent Fragrance, and actually that was Byredo's launch in 1996. But apparently there is an issue. There are issues related to the Pfeiffer Awards. There are rumors. It's hard to find out how the evaluation process really works. From a research point of view, one can clearly state that there are transparency issues involved here. Obviously, money plays a role. That's evident from their website. But for example, we have a hard time to find out who's actually the evaluator for the independent category. And this is this lack of credibility in the field of artistic perfumery is even manifest in blogs. I copied here a few comments from NST Perfume from 2014, last year. And this altogether basically is now the scene for the Art and Olfaction Awards. So we can think of perfumery as cultural products. We can think about award processes, award institutions in other creative sectors. We can think of and analyze how awards in perfumery are organized and have traditionally been organized and realize there's something flawed about it. And that gave more or less rise to the launch of the Art and Olfaction Awards 2 years ago. And now I hand over to Saskia to share a little bit about her experiences and about some of the rules and how it works. And I might then also ask some questions, and you are also encouraged to ask questions or to share your views, because I think it's interesting to see how we all together make actually sense of that recent development.
Thank you, Klaus, for explaining the context so well. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay, it's confusing. I can't hear myself. As Klaus mentioned, the Art and Olfaction Awards were started, this is our second year now. They were started based on my interest in film festival culture, which I used to run a film festival. And in the film world, there's I think there's hundreds of film festivals. And it became apparent to me that in the perfume industry, we could probably use some more platforms, I suppose, for different types of perfumers. The Art and Olfaction Awards are a program of a nonprofit that I run in Los Angeles called the Institute for Art and Olfaction, which, like the Scent Culture Institute, is devoted to experimentation, education, and primarily the arts in perfumery. Our approach to perfumery is not as a product, but rather as an artistic expression, and we work with cultural institutions in LA and other places to make sure that scent is incorporated into cultural programming. This is getting into the announcement. Are we ready?
Yeah, then talk a little bit about the Art and Olfaction Awards. There are 3 types of awards.
Yeah.
So what's about this?
So, being somewhat of a stranger to the fragrance industry, it was a little difficult to define what the categories were. What we came up with was Artisan, which is a company that is run by the perfumer. So the perfumer has creative input over all aspects of branding and distribution. Independent, which is a company that is run not by the perfumer, where they hire perfumers, but there's a limit to, the independent brand can be owned by a larger company, but it needs to have a limit of 3 holdings. So for instance, if a company is owned by LVMH, it would not qualify. If it's owned by a smaller, more localized company, then it would qualify. And then the third category that we added actually this year in response to the increasing amount of creative work with Perfumery is the Experimental Award. And that's designed to celebrate the work of maybe artists or maybe perfumers who are working outside of the space of commerce, who are really working in the cultural institutional context. So does that answer that?
Yeah. And what does a person interested to submit something has to do to get into the award?
In order to submit, you just need to qualify in one of those 3 categories. We were thinking of creating a recommendation engine where people were nominated, but what we found was that would work against smaller brands that weren't maybe popular or known. So rather than have people nominate brands, we asked the brands or the perfumers to submit directly in order that we might discover new brands. So.
And how is the evaluation process organized?
The evaluation process, we'll actually talk about the judges in a little bit in my slideshow. But the judges judge all the perfumes blindly. They're sent in small vials and tracked just by a number. We have, I think it was 11 preliminary judges who are based in Los Angeles because we can't afford to send the vials all over the world, frankly. And they assess all the scents. Every single judge smells every single scent, so there's fair and accurate and consistent judging across all the platforms. Then we've established the finalists, which we then sent to our finalist judges, who I'll go into a little bit, who then assess the 5 finalists in each category, score them, and from that we determine the winner. At that point, they're still anonymous, so the judges do not know who they're smelling. They don't know what the branding looks like, and I feel that we do that intentionally so that smaller brands have a chance, because sometimes it's hard not to be affected by beautiful bottles and packaging. So.
Yeah, Mark?
One thing I want to really point out, so you talked about the transparency part of it when it comes to this. One of the things that Saskia did as a judging for this year was amazing. If you follow them on Facebook, there were multiple pictures. If you follow them on Facebook, there were multiple pictures of the judges around this huge table with a vial and a little white sheet underneath it. You really saw, and you saw all of the judges over the course of the pictures coming in, thoughtful looks on their faces.
Well, that makes me happy to hear because I took all the photos.
But I want to commend you on that transparency. There is no doubt how the judging process is done for this. I think that is going to do you well in the long term because, as Claus already pointed out, the Fifis is like this black box. I don't know how it happens. Nobody in this room knows how it happens.
Yeah.
But with your award, it's, if you look, do the barest Google search, you'll find your webpage, you'll find the Facebook page, you will see the transparency of it. Anybody will understand what a fair process it is. They'll realize there's not any way of shifting it or doing anything. You've listed your judges on the website. Everybody sees that. It's not going to be like, oh, they're a judge and they won. Gee, how shocking. Not going to happen. I want to commend you. Everything that you have put into place has made it done. I have said it in print on my blog. I think in 10 years, this is going to be the premier award to win for people in independent perfumery.
Well, hopefully. Thank you. What is your name? Oh, hi, Mark. Oh, it's nice to meet you. Yeah, well, so Mark brings up something that's actually very important to me. So coming from the film industry, there is a high, the rhetoric in the film industry right now is transparency and openness and free distribution, and with the rise of BitTorrent and all that. And it did, although I understand that why the perfume industry is more secretive and hidden, it just doesn't, I don't think that it will serve the future. I think the future is one of openness. So thank you for complimenting the photos. I took them all myself, so I'm glad you like them. It's my
We might
hobby.
even go one step further, because observing this process and interviewing some of the judges and looking at the evaluation forms, Saskia might also share a little bit how the judges actually evaluate, because you have a clear-cut guideline. It's not just, you know, like this, and how do they judge? What are they asked to do?
Again, in the interest of fairness, we had to create some parameters that were sort of consistent. I mean, it's very easy for me to say, oh, I like it, you know, but why do I like it? And why should, and how would my score compare, say, to Klaus's or yours, Mark? So what we did is we created 4 categories within each category. First impressions, and ultimately it is going to be personal. Do I like the first impressions? We instruct the judges to try to separate their like and dislike and look at it more of as a composition, or you know. So anyway, first impressions are sort of the first impressions of the scent. Dry down is they revisit the scent in 20 minutes to half an hour and see how it performs in the dry down. Intentionality, this is a really important one because it shows the proficiency of the perfumer. If they say, I'm making a perfume that is about a walk in Paris in the springtime and it smells like the sewers of Detroit, that's bad. They did not have intentionality. They weren't in control of their materials. And then the final one is X factor, which is where we allow the judges to really advocate for something that they love for some reason. Maybe it performed very badly in all the other categories, but for some reason it works. That's what the X factor is for. And this is across all the categories. In experimental, it's a little bit different because we're judging art projects. So then it comes more into, you know, is this art project make efficient use of scent in a way that's not just a gimmick, and a few other things. But mostly it's the same categories across all three categories. So
perhaps if I can add one more point there. What is we looked at it, and well, for each dimension, the judge then allocates 1 to
points, 1 through 5. They score 1 through 5 in each category for each perfume. So the maximum amount of perfumes would be 20. The minimum would be 4. Although some judges gave zeros, which.
What we look at the moment, but we haven't any results on that, but is actually to look at in what way the evaluation is subjective, or whether there is a certain agreement. And whether that could be significantly, whether that's at a significant level, actually, that there is a correspondence with respect to the evaluation of the different judges, whether there's agreement or whether that's arbitrary. We don't have any insights on that yet. And this year, we also, and that relates back to our research, we asked the judges to argue, in addition to a figure, to come up with, at least for their top 5, I think, for their top 5 perfumes, to come up with arguments in the sense of, you know, what do you associate with the first impression? What were your first impressions? Or why do you think there is a match between the briefing? Actually, the submissions are accompanied by some information on the briefing. That's the basis on which the match, the intentionality is actually evaluated. So we ask for, you know, why do you think there is a match? And at least anecdotally, at the moment, our sample is very, very small, and we have to be careful with some general conclusions. But it's at least there's at an anecdotal level, it's striking to see that different aspects, different associations between different evaluators really correspond and echo or resonate with each other, though they work independently at different locations and hardly know each other. Yeah.
Shall we announce the finalists, maybe, or
should we? Are there questions up to this point, or points for discussion?
I will, after we announce the finalists, I will list the judges and last year's winners. And
Yeah.
a lot of the finalists and winners from last year are here. So I'll tell you who. I would encourage you visiting them, and you know. So I think first we have, there we go, the Artisan category. The finalists this year are A City on Fire by Imaginary Authors, which is based in Portland, Oregon. The perfumer is called Josh Meyer. He was also a finalist last year. The second one is Eau de Céleri by Mon Sillage, based in Montreal, in Canada. Perfumer Isabelle Michaud. Foxglove by DS and Durga, based in New York. The perfumers, it's a collaborative between David Seth Maltz and Kavi Maltz. Tobacco Cognac by House of Cherry Bomb, a collaboration between Alexis Carl and Maria McElroy, based in New York, USA. And Woodcut by Olympic Orchids, based in Seattle, also a finalist last year. Any questions? Okay. Independent.
Well, these are the finalists. When the
Question. Yeah, after we go through this, I'll tell you the brands that are here. Well, I'll tell you after. So let me get through this because it's already there. Independent, Ombre Indigo by Olfactive Studio. They are here at Esxence. I highly recommend you visit them. The perfumer is Mylène Alron, based in Paris. Boccanera by Orto Parisi, or Boccanera by Orto Parisi, I should say. Perfumer Alessandro Galtieri in Amsterdam. Pache by Ray Matz, perfumer Christophe Lodemiel in New York. And Christophe was a judge, and when he made it to the finals, we had to pull him off the judging, obviously.
Well, he was not involved in this. He was a final judge, and before, yeah.
Yeah, last year he was a finals judge. This year he's submitted.
He was nominated as a final judge and then withdrawn as soon as that was.
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Here at Esxence, Luca Maffei. Are you here, Luca? Yeah, in the back. Black Pepper and Sandalwood. He for Akakapa is the brand. And Skive by Canoe, based in Austin, Texas. Perfumer Jessica Hanna brand Canoe. Okay, any questions on art independent or for experimental? Oh, yeah. The Sadakichi Award, we call it the Sadakichi Award because of, in honor of Sadakichi Hartmann, who was a German-Japanese person who lived in New York in the turn of the 20th century and created a number of failed scent performances. Went desperately wrong, and in honor of his effort and his failure, ultimately, we decided to name the award after him. So this is our experimental award. The first finalist is Cataline, based in the US, actually international. A large-scale exhibition that opened at the Contemporary Austin. Chroma by perfumer Dawn Spencer Hurwitz, who's mostly known for DSH perfumes for artisan work. This is a piece that opened at the Denver Art Museum. Crime and Punishment, a theater piece based in Minnesota that opened in Minnesota. Famous Deaths, a group from Holland that created a large-scale sort of installation piece with scent. And In Libro de Tenebris, an artist in London who created a scent project around books. And those are the finalists. Oh, wow. So, we talked a little bit about the judging earlier, but I'd just like to take a moment to thank the judges. You can see their names up there, but I'll read them out because they warrant repeating. Ashley Eden Kessler, Brent Leonesio, Daniel Krasovsky, Hank Jenkins, James McHugh, Laura Johnson, Neil Harris, Persephone, Stephen Gontarski, Sherry Sebastian, and Yvetra Grantham were our preliminary judges, all based in Los Angeles. They're all either researchers, professors, artists, or perfumers. Many of them work with Scent Bar and Lucky Scent, so they experience scents a lot, and they have a pretty good sense of what's out there. Our artisan and independent final judges were Luca Turin, Mandy Aftel, Miriam Vareldzis, Sebastian Fischenich, who I believe is here with Humeki and Graf, and Sarah Horowitz-Tron, who is not here. So they are based around the world, so what we did is we took the final perfumes and we sent them little vials, and then they assessed them. And then the experimental judges were Dr. Cohen, Jeff Besa, Marcos Lutjens, Mark Allen, Allison Axton, and Bettina Hubby, all curators, artists, or researchers in the art field with scent. And I think before we open to questions, I just wanted to mention last year's winners. Ashoka by Neela Vermeer Creations, she is here. Koenig by Yosh. She is not here, but Koenig is at our table if you want to experience it. Calling All Angels by April Aromatics, a perfumer based out of Berlin. No, Berlin, I believe, somewhere in Germany. And John From by Ether Arts Perfume, who is a one-person show in Boulder, Colorado. And to me, the example of why the awards have been successful, that somebody like that with such a small bottle and not much marketing could get the attention that she got. And our sponsors. I think, Michelin, are you here? Yay, hey Michelin. So our sponsors are here. I'd like to especially thank Dr. Claus and Ashraf from the Scent Culture Institute for supporting us. Michelin for being a wonderful supporter with Sa Fleur Bon and Esxence for having us here. And I think that's it. I think we can get on to questions.
I think you may have forgotten to mention that people can smell the finalists at the booth after this.
Yeah, we will have the finalists. We present them in little generic bottles intentionally so you can experience them sort of like the judges did. Just experience the scent and then maybe you can see who they are. I would also like to just mention that a couple people who were finalists last year who are here, if you're interested. There's Fried Moudin has a booth. She was a finalist last year. They were a finalist last year with Feu Follet. Cristiano Canali is here with the Osmotec booth. He was a finalist last year with Magnolia Essentialis, which was actually made for Esxence, I believe, last year. And Hayari Perfumes was a finalist. They're here. Their finalist last year was only for her. And Sahara Oud by Fragrance Dubois is also here. They were finalists last year. And I'll have this list at my booth over there when we're done. So, to you.
Thank you. Questions? Comments?
The booth is right on the other side of the cafe, next to Osmotec.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see you. And I can't hear you either.
Okay, you are a New Yorker. So Michelin's asking if there's going to be any changes for next year, is that right? The truth is I'm an outsider to this industry. I'm brand new to this. I come from the film industry. So I don't know what I'm doing. So things are going to change all the time. We really do encourage honesty about that at the awards. I don't make any mystery about that. And I definitely encourage feedback. If people feel, I mean, people have felt, for instance, that the independent award is a little bit confusing. Should it be called niche? Should it be called independent? What is the limit to, what is independent? What is an independent perfume is, maybe, I don't know. It's a very confusing category, so we're definitely rethinking that. I do think that we brought it down from 10 finalists last year to 5 finalists on the recommendation of several people, because I do believe that the less we present, the more valuable it will be for the people we do present. Having said that, there's so many people that end up getting left out who are really good too. So we might institute a sort of runner-up category as well for the 5 next top scoring perfumes. Yeah, I welcome suggestions. Any other questions?
I don't know if a lot of people, oh wow, okay.
That's better.
Hello. I don't know if a lot of people here know what the Institute of Art and Olfaction really is and what you do, besides the awards. Would you give like an elevator pitch on that?
Sure, yeah. So the Institute for Art and Olfaction is a non-profit organization that's devoted to experimentation and with scent. So that typically takes the form of large-scale art projects in museums or institutions of some sort. But in addition to that, we run a number of very, very introductory workshops where people can just tinker with the materials of perfume in a non-intimidating environment. you know, we are in Los Angeles. It's sort of the end of the world from the point of view of perfume, for sure, and from many points of view. So we have been lacking a presence for perfumery in LA. So that's sort of what I'm trying to counterbalance with this nonprofit. Does that answer the question? Anybody else?
Yeah.
Klaus?
I don't see anybody, any other hands.
Hello.
In this case, thank you very much for coming and joining us.
There's a question.
Oh.
Hello. Hello. Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. You mentioned acknowledgeable consumers drive demand to quality. I would like to understand, what do you mean by acknowledgeable consumer? Sorry. Do you hear me?
No.
Oh.
Knowledgeable consumers. There was the bullet point on one slide, on the summary slide of developments in niche perfumery, that I said there is a force driving the industry, and that's the more and more educated the consumer. When I got into this field and into researching this 5 or 6 years ago, I really had for me this was completely new. These days, for example, teaching students in St. Gallen, I really make the experience that even niche brands are known to some degree in a more general public auditorium. So it's really getting out of very niche circles. And why is that the case? It's the case of people like Mark Binke and many other, probably some others here in the room I can't see because I can't see anybody apart from his head, writing blogs, and people just happen to get on these blogs, and by reading how perfumes are discussed there, they get beyond the level they used to consume at a couple of years ago. And then, of course, also perfume stores and very knowledgeable people there, Scent Bar in Los Angeles, or stores in niche stores in Zurich, in London, and basically everywhere these days. People getting into these stores and being exposed to the perfumes there, and getting into exchange with the highly qualified people in these stores. Of course, they get educated out of these stores. That's something different from getting into a normal department store and just picking a couple of trousers or a couple of shirts. So there is education going on, and this education then creates a more knowledgeable consumer. And the more knowledgeable consumer then, after having been to a niche store, actually I will take my students next week to the niche store in Zurich, for various reasons. Number one, for an educational reason. Number two, because I sincerely believe that at a business school, people who target the top can't smell like the bottom. This is Claus stinks is an important quote by George Orwell. So Claus stinks, or it's not. I'm not sure whether it's Claus stinks, but it's at least social distinction stinks by George Orwell. And so educating people who strive for the top need to smell like the top. And this, of course, is all educational and changes consumption patterns.
I think there's a question here.
Yeah, it's not a question. I just would like to add in the same context. I once came across a LinkedIn profile of a L'Oreal executive, and in fact it mentioned that this person was specialized in market research for naive consumers. So I think it's just the opposite. It's we're interested in people who are educated and who are, but apparently they were interested to know a lot about naive consumers. How to sell things to naive consumers.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I have found very interesting about the awards, and I think I would qualify as a naive consumer, maybe a year ago I would, maybe now not so much, but is that there is this sort of sense of discovery, and but I don't really have anything intelligent to say about that, actually. So, Klaus?
No.
Okay, interesting though.
I'm just wondering, you mentioned the term niche quite often, and we see a lot of niche brands here, and the term is in fact used very often. But can you speak a little bit about the credibility and the value of using this term still? Because there are obviously also big brands who are mimicking, in a way, niche.
Yes, I must admit that my use of the term wasn't very reflected. It's a category, and I think what's going on there are phenomena we could label as category spanning, category crossing, category merging. For me, I used it as a label, as a kind of umbrella label today, being aware of its limits and its weaknesses. It's a question, what is the criteria based on which we categorize? Is it distribution? Is it the quality? Is it the production technique? Is it ownership, capital structure? So there are diverse criteria based on which we could categorize. There might be others, but these are probably a few of the obvious. And based on this, we would then come up with different labels and different orders of the world. Today, I don't have a preference for this. The reason why I use niche is that even today, compared to the overall market, it's still a niche. I mean, we still talk about 5 to 10% or something like this. So from a macroeconomic point of view, it's a niche, and this niche is fragmented among hundreds of brands and hundreds of scents, compared to a rather concentrated mainstream 90 or 95%. So I would think that even niche might sound a little bit derogatory or negative. I think it's still appropriate to speak of it looking at the broader picture of it as a niche, which is even fragmented. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, one over there.
Excuse me, maybe just a last one. For the awards, do brands have to apply, or do you select, or?
So we created an application system. The reason we did that is because we felt that if people nominated other people, there was too much opportunity to miss brands. For instance, this woman who won last year, Ether Arts Perfume, nobody knew about her, you know. So we have a nomination. We have a submission process, which opens in October of this year. I should say that to submit, we charge $45, which I struggle with. I want to make it free, but you know, we can't do it without it. So sorry. Another question? What? There we go. Maybe one day we'll do the same. Thousands of dollars. No. She said that the Fragrance Foundation charges thousands and thousands.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, we're not talking about a cash cow here.
No, this is not a cash cow. We do not. I have a day job. I think that's it. Is there any other questions, everybody?
Then thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for joining us.
Yeah. I should say Claus and I and Ashraf with the Scent Culture Institute and the Institute for Art and Olfaction will be hovering around the booth. So come join us after my cigarette.